All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick's Strength and Power, and today I wanted to make a video about young Ronnie Coleman, and that would be Ronnie Coleman in the early years of his pro career and just before he turned pro. So specifically, some of the photos that we should look at here are from the 1991 World Amateur Championships, which Ronnie Coleman won the overall at, earning him his pro card. And then 1992 would be his pro debut at the Chicago Pro. And for several years throughout the early 90s, Ronnie Coleman will not place very successfully or very highly at really any shows, and especially not the Mr. Olympia. Now, obviously, nowadays, Ronnie Coleman is known for his Olympia reign from 1998 to 2005, winning himself a record total of 8 Mr. Olympia titles, tying him with Lee Haney for the record of most Olympias ever won, making him arguably the greatest bodybuilder of all time. And one of the things that made Ronnie Coleman such a memorable bodybuilder was the sheer size and mass that Ronnie Coleman brought to the Olympia stage. He was simply unbeatable just from the sheer standpoint of how much muscle this guy carried on his frame, especially from the back and on his legs. He was almost unbeatable from the back. And while many bodybuilding fans refer to him as the greatest Mr. Olympia of all time, there are many that refer to him as the freakiest Mr. Olympia of all time for that reason. The fact that his competition weight was anywhere from 287 to 300 pounds on stage in ripped, shredded condition. I would like to refer you guys to 2003, Ronnie Coleman's 2003 Mr. Olympia appearance. By all accounts, 2003 Ronnie Coleman was one of the most impressive bodybuilders to ever step foot on a bodybuilding stage. From size, freakiness, detail, vascularity, he had it all in 2003, and that was arguably one of Ronnie Coleman's biggest physiques. But that's not going to be the focus of this video. Even though Ronnie Coleman was known for being a mass monster and a freaky bodybuilder, the early days of Ronnie Coleman actually made Ronnie, in my opinion, someone with the perfect physique for the new classic physique division. And this is something that I think would be an interesting topic because it's something that nobody would really expect. When you think of Ronnie Coleman, you think of 300-pound Mr. Olympia Ronnie Coleman, one of the freakiest bodybuilders of all time. You don't typically think of a young 27-year-old Ronnie Coleman that has not yet turned pro with actually a very aesthetic, very classic-looking physique. Now, during his Olympia reign, Ronnie Coleman did draw some criticism from his detractors about the size of his waist. His waist would often come in a little bit blown out, a little bit distended, and he often had what people call today a bubble gut. But when Ronnie Coleman first got started bodybuilding in his mid to late 20s, he didn't have any signs of a gut whatsoever. In fact, I believe his waist was one of his strongest points because he had such an insane V-taper effect with his earlier version of his physique. And that's exactly what they're looking for in the classic physique division today. And a young Ronnie Coleman, I think, would be a perfect competitor for that division. He had the upper body size, and even though he wasn't nearly as big as he was during his Olympia reign, he still had a pretty good-sized back, which gave him a very good illusion of a V-taper. It made all of his front poses look very good. The front double bicep, the standing relaxed, the front lat spread. All of these poses for a young Ronnie Coleman presented a very classic physique. Now, it is worth mentioning in this video that Ronnie Coleman does claim that back in 1991, so these photos that you're looking at where he's in the pinkish purple trunks, he claims to have won that show 100% naturally, making him one of the few IFBB pros to claim to have won their pro card drug-free. Now, the purpose of this video is not to debate whether or not that's true, but if it is true, Ronnie Coleman might have some of the best bodybuilding genetics of all time. Now, I think the classic characteristics of Ronnie Coleman's early physique are a perfect example of a counterpoint to the argument that people who compete in classic physique are people who do not have the genetics to be a men's open Mr. Olympia. I think if classic physique had been around back then, Ronnie Coleman could have competed in that and been very successful. So the point that I'm getting at there is I believe a lot of the competitors in classic physique today do have the potential to do well at the Olympia. They do have bodybuilding genetics, and they do have genetics like a young Ronnie Coleman did. But instead they choose not to push it and go any further than that, and they want to go for the most classic physique possible rather than competing in the men's open Olympia and just going for the biggest, most muscular, freakiest physique possible. Because if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, I prefer the younger version of Ronnie Coleman's physique to the more larger, freakier, blown out version of Ronnie Coleman's physique. I think had Ronnie Coleman stayed the size that he did in 1991, that would have been a very preferable physique had the size standards at the Olympia not been what they were. Unfortunately, Ronnie Coleman had to get as big as he got to be competitive with the guys in the 90s and to win those Olympias. It was necessary for him to gain that size. But I think from an aesthetically pleasing standpoint, the younger version of Ronnie Coleman, in my opinion, is one of the best versions of Ronnie Coleman. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and let me know in the comment section below about what you think of Ronnie Coleman's younger physique, and do you think he would have cut it as a classic physique competitor? Thank you guys for watching the video. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.